What do you think of? What do you think of when you hear the word obsessed? When you think food?
Ex-girlfriend.
Don't you? Isn't that your answer for everything? There, food? Oh, it's not. Okay. She says it is. All right. Somebody else. What do you think of when you hear the word obsessed?
Ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend? Okay, isn't that stalker? That's kind of scary. Okay, we've got food. We've got who? Michael Jackson. Wow, obsessed. Okay. I'm not even going to go there. What else? What do you think of? What? All right, addicted to something. These are all good answers. They're just... They're all different, okay. Somebody else, what do you think of when you hear the word obsessed?
Worship.
Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber? Are you obsessed with... No. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm so glad that you're not.
Stalker.
You think stalker. How many of you, when you hear the word obsessed, have a negative vibe about it? How many of y'all feel negative vibe? All right, how many of you, when you hear the word obsessed, you think positive vibe?
Oh, soccer.
Oh, soccer, especially soccer, yeah. So you're obsessed with soccer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, she didn't say stalker, Marie. She said soccer.
Soccer's my nickname.
Okay. Very cute. Soccer's my nickname. All right. But what does obsessed mean? Do you know what obsessed means? What does the word obsessed mean?
Over-attached.
Over-attached, all right. What? Wanting more and more of it, okay? You think about it all the time.
All your effort and everything.
It takes up all your effort, all your energies. It takes up everything. Time, money, resources, all of that. All of that, okay? All right? All right, that's good. That's really a good definition. The dictionary definition says you are excessively preoccupied with one single thing. Excessively preoccupied with one single thing. Now, knowing that definition, does that sound good or bad?
Depending on what that thing is.
Depending on what you're preoccupied with. All right, Sylvia, what would be something good to be preoccupied with? What would that be? Okay, all right. What would something not be good to be preoccupied with?
Soccer.
Soccer, okay. All right.
That hurts my feelings.
The idea of holding back, of dividing our interest, of not putting all our eggs in one basket, that's not in the Bible. You know that? That's not in the Bible. In the Bible, obsession is in there. And as Sylvie says, you are supposed to be obsessed with one thing and one thing only, and that is Jesus. You should be, as Sarah said, all your time, all your efforts, all your energies, all your resources ought to be invested in Jesus. Relationship with Him, worshiping Him, loving Him, and by extension, loving His people. Which would be, yes, believers, but it also would be everybody, since everybody's created in the image of God. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to look at profile of the obsessed as opposed to what we had looked at a few weeks earlier, profile of the lukewarm. So let's get into this. We got a lot to cover. And we're going to fly through Scripture too, so hang on to your hats and all that good kind of stuff. All right, look there in your study sheet. What do you think the first blank is?
After.
Excessively preoccupied.
Well, yeah, that would be the definition, but now let's work down. What does obsessed look like? For a believer, what does it mean to be obsessed with Jesus? Anybody got an idea?
Sold out.
Sold out, obedient. First thing ought to be love. If we look at Luke, if we go to Luke 6. When you get there, say word. Luke 6. Luke 6. Luke 6. Luke 6:35 specifically. Luke 6:35 specifically. What's it say?
But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back.
All right. That's all I need is that very first part. Love your enemies. So y'all are thinking, love. Oh yeah, I love the people around me. I love my family. I love my friends. I love everybody in this youth group. I love my small group leader. I love whoever. Way further. You got to step way beyond that. If you're obsessed with Jesus, it would be love your enemies. So you've got a space there. I want you to write down right now 1 or 2 of your enemies, and you all got them. They might be in your own house. It might be in your little group of friends. It might be somebody on your team. It might be somebody in class. I want you to write down the name of 1 or 2 of your enemies, because that's who you're going to be praying for this week. That's part of your homework right there.
So mean to me.
Okay? I mean, look what he says there. Love your enemies and do good to them. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. See, Jesus just doesn't want you to love the people around you. He wants you to love the people around you that don't love you. Love your enemies. Love your enemies. How many of y'all are real good with that one?
Great.
You're great with that one? You love your enemies? You love everybody?
I love everybody.
Okay. All right.
You love me.
If you're obsessed with Jesus, then you love even the people who hate you. It would and never do anything for you. Okay? I'll admit, I'm not there yet. That's not an easy one. I could pray for them, but have to actually do something for them, that would be pushing it. I would have more trouble with that. Enemies. People you don't like. People that don't like you. Your brother. I don't know. Whoever is an enemy.
Well, I mean, like, everyone.
Somebody you can't stand. Somebody you would not go out of your way to help.
They had to hate you. They like, so you hated them.
No, I'm talking about you don't like them. I'm not talking about they hate you.
Yeah,
If they hate you and you don't care, you don't care. I'm talking about somebody that when you see them, you turn directions and go in the other direction. Somebody that you talk about behind their back. Somebody you would do wrong to if you got the opportunity and could get away with it. You all know exactly who I'm talking about. Now go back in and fill that blank in. You know who we're talking about. You know, there's somebody that hates me and I don't care who they are and I don't even know who they are. That's really not the point. How about somebody who stabbed you in the back? A best friend. Somebody you're close to, and now they're not your friend anymore. That's to love your enemy. That help you there, Grace? Grace, if you can't name them, I'll name them for you. Okay, all right. All right, number 2, risk takers. Now, we're not talking about Evel Knievel jumping over the Snake River Canyon, all right? We're not talking about that. We're not talking about all those people we played the game with a couple of weeks ago, the Daredevil, the Stuntman. What are we talking about when we say take a risk? If you're obsessed with Jesus, you would take a risk. You would get out of your comfort zone. What would be out of your comfort zone, Dalton?
Eating in Moldova.
Eating in Moldova. Ah, I got you. Eating in Moldova, okay. What else? Dying for God, okay? Sharing your faith. Going to a foreign country. Look at 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11:24. We're not going to read the whole thing. 2 Corinthians 11. 11:24. 2 Corinthians 11:24. Somebody read that.
5 times I've received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. Keep reading.
Yeah, keep reading. Let's just hear a few things that Paul went through. He went through the scourging Jesus went through not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 times.
3 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods.
Beaten with rods. Does that sound like fun? What else happened to him?
Once I was pelted with stones.
All right, he was stoned to death and left for dead one time.
3 times I was shipwrecked.
Shipwrecked, and he spent a day and night in the open sea after he was shipwrecked. Does this sound like somebody who was safe?
No.
How many of you have prayed for safety on a trip?
Yes.
Oh yeah, all of y'all. Everybody's prayed for, traveling mercies, all that good kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's wrong. How many of you think that being in the center of God's will is the safest place to be? Very good. It's not. According to Paul, it could be the most dangerous place to be, is in the center of God's will. And yet, that would be exactly where you want to be. So you'd be a risk taker, like Paul. If you're obsessed with Jesus, you care more about God and His kingdom coming than your own safety. So you would be willing to go to a foreign land. You would be willing to eat, you don't know what it is, but you don't want to insult your host. You would be willing to share your faith tomorrow in biology in front of your entire class with your teacher who doesn't believe in God, but believes in the God of evolution. Yeah. Yeah, see? Risk takers. You don't have to go to a foreign country to take a risk. You can just go out the door 3.5 miles. Or maybe your home. You're the only believer in your home. And it would be a risk to share your faith with mom and dad or a brother or sister. That's taking a risk. That's taking a risk. All right, let's move on. Number 3. Anybody got an idea? Kind to all? That's not far off. How about friend to all? It says friends, but friend to all. Okay, friend to all. Friend to all. Look at 1 Timothy 6.
I was already there.
You're already there. 1 Timothy 6. It's a long passage, but let's go with verse 8 there. 1 Timothy 6:8.
And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and snare, and into many foolish and harmless lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition.
Alright, so Robbie, what do you think that Paul is trying to tell Timothy about having stuff?
You have too much, you might fall into this.
Alright, so if you have too much, what is he suggesting you do with it?
Give it.
Alright, give it to the poor. Give it to people who don't have anything. Do you know Jesus talked about the poor and money almost more than anything else? And He talked a lot about it in connection to the kingdom of God. So we, again, who have more than most everybody in the entire world, we're the richest 1%. And usually most believers are the richest 1%. We were given that gift, according to Psalms, to turn around and bless the nations. We were given that to turn around and bless the nations. When's the last time you blessed a nation with your wealth? Anybody? When's the last time you blessed a nation with your wealth? Anybody give to the wells last year?
Oh.
Yeah, there would be 70 wells pumping white water right now, okay? So how many of you did a Samaritan's Purse box maybe 3 months ago? All right, you giving to the nations, all right? All right. How many of you have given or worked at the food ministry or the hymn ministry in the last few months? That's to the nations. It's not foreign nations. It would be the nation right here, the poor people, okay? All right? Good, good. Moving right along. Next one. Anybody know what this is? How many would you consider yourselves crazy? Even people who have no idea what I'm talking about just raised their hand and then walked out the door. Alright, how many of you consider yourself crazy? Alright, answer me this. What is more crazy? Giving away what you have to help feed the poor, or remodeling your home that needs to be remodeled, that you're going to live in for 30 or 40 more years and then die and leave it to somebody else? Which is more crazy? To invest in remodeling that home or to give to the poor? That's more crazy. Wow. Which is more crazy? To give to the poor or to extravagantly remodel your home?
Remodel your home.
Okay.
Remodel your home.
Alright. If you're an obsessed person, let's turn to Luke 14:33. You ought to know this from Radical, and we've used it several times. It's a memory verse. Luke 14:33. I'll start it. Anyone
Who does not give up.
who does not give up. Wow, y'all are terrible at memory verses. I'm going to hold your small group leaders responsible. We're going to make them get up here and do all the memory verses next week. Anyone who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Is that crazy? Folks, that is absolutely crazy to the rest of the world that we would say we would give up everything to be a follower of Jesus Christ. That's what we're talking about. Obsessed people do things that aren't normal. they would, instead of remodeling their home, give that money to the poor, or go on a mission trip, or buy wells, or make a lot of Samaritan's Purse boxes. Folks, we should not be normal. Normal is what the world does. Normal is what the world does. We should be abnormal. Like we said last year, you should be radical. That, for a believer, is normal. You ought to be doing crazy things. You ought to be going on 4 mission trips in 4 weeks. You ought to be going halfway around the world. You ought to spend your holidays, you know, when you get a Monday or a Tuesday off, helping the hymn team or helping the food ministry instead of sleeping in late. You ought to give up something that you would like to do for something that would benefit somebody else. You ought to be crazy. You ought to be crazy. You shouldn't be normal. If you're normal, you look like everybody else, and we all know where you go if you look like everybody else. And it's not heaven. It's not heaven. All right. Next one, number 5. All right. What does that look like? Turn to James 4:6. This is an easy one. You can even memorize this one if you haven't. James 4:6. You get there, say word. Somebody read it.
But he gives us more grace. This is why the Scripture says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble.
God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If you're obsessed with Jesus, you want to point people to Him, not to you. Okay? God does not share His glory with anybody else. Therefore, everything you do should point to Him. When you win a ball game, you give Him the credit. When you do good on a test, you give Him the credit. Anything good you do, you give Him the credit. Anything that bad happens to you, you give Him the credit. You give Him the glory when you're going through it. All of that. That's being humble. You want Jesus seen more and more, and you seen less and less. When people look at you, they go, well, there's a Jesus freak. There's somebody who's radical. You want that. You want that label. You want to be known as that. Because it's not about you, it's about Him. You want people to know who you are and what you believe. Alright, so you're humble. You want your light to shine. Next. Whoops. You're a server. You're a servant. Okay? Go to John 15:8. Go to John 15:8. Get there, say word.
Word.
Let me read it.
This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples.
Okay, obsessed people take joy in loving God and loving people. You're serving them. You're meeting their needs. Maybe it's a friend who's having a bad day. Maybe you are going down to the food ministry and taking food to people who need it, and while you're there, you share with them the gospel. If you just take the box of food and leave, you've done nothing. You've done what the rest of the world does. That's called social work. We're not about social work. We're about gospel work. Yes, we can give food. Yes, we can share things. Yes, we can meet people's needs. But we do that in order to share the gospel. We don't do it to make ourselves feel good. We do it to help other people. And in doing so, it gives us a door to share the gospel. You know, they're not going to listen to you if their stomach's growling. If you can meet that kind of need, then you might be able to serve them in some way.